Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Think and Reform podcast. My name is Luke Saint. Thank you so much for tuning in. Head to futureofchristendom.org for announcements. We are planning our October 2026 Future of Christendom Conference, America Reforged. And we're also still releasing some of the content we had from our previous Lancastrian Theonomy Symposium. So head to our futurechristendom.org for that. We also have books and articles and debates on there, especially on our YouTube channel at Future of Christendom. So head over there to check that out. We have one-day conferences coming up as well. So be on the lookout for announcements for those on the website. So today I've got a couple things we're going to go through. I want to start the first one off with a look at the rear of an Amish buggy. Now, I cannot find any articles supporting this, but my dad, from his dealings with the Amish and the Mennonites, he used to work in concrete. He used to sell concrete to them, and he would get into conversations with them, and he learned a lot about them. Obviously, you know, growing up in Pennsylvania, we learned about the Amish, and you know, my brothers work closely with a lot of Amish, and you know, my dad was able to, after a while, figure out the difference between the Amish and the Mennonite here in Pennsylvania. I mean, you go to a different state and suddenly the traditions change. But the Amish will wear straw boaters. Mennonites will wear fedoras. The Amish will grow beards. The Mennonites won't. And we're talking about Lancaster County now. This is just like basically the Lancaster County area. And you go out to Western Pennsylvania, maybe things are different. You go to Indiana, it's different, and Missouri. The Amish ride scooters, and the Mennonites ride bikes. Amish have gray buggies, and the Mennonites have black buggies. And these things never switch, right? These things are, if you see a gray buggy, it's Amish 100% of the time, right? The Mennonites do not drive gray buggies. They drive black ones, right? Old Order Mennonites. Fewer and fewer of those around. And there's different sects, of course, obviously, inside each of the Mennonite and the Amish. You have Old Order Mennonite, Old Order Amish, and then you have, for the Mennonites, you have Weaverland Conference, and then you have Pikers, and then you have, Beachy Amish and all that kind of stuff. So there's different groups within, even in Lancaster County. But my dad told me that the reason, and I cannot find an article, I looked, and I cannot find an article substantiating this claim. But he told me the reason that the Amish are driving buggies is not because they always drove buggies. And it has nothing to do with, as far as I can tell, nothing to do with community. The reason they drive buggies is because back in the 50s, when the driver's license was rolled out for people, you need to get a driver's license. From what my dad says, the Amish were driving cars at that time. They had no problem with cars. But what they did was they told the state, you don't have the right to tell us what to do. So they stopped driving cars and they continued, driving buggies, right? Or they went back to driving buggies, if you will. But what they did was, the attitude was, you can't tell us what to do. You don't have the right to tell us what to do. So instead of driving around without licenses, the Amish decided, again, the Anabaptist sentiment of being pacifistic, they just said, you can't tell us what to do, so we're just going to go to something where we don't need a license. And that's where the tradition of buggy driving comes from in the Amish community and Mennonite community. Now, if you take a look at the back of this buggy here, you'll see, this is an Amish buggy. I'm not sure where it is, though. Oh, it is. It says Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You will see reflectors, and they have blinkers now. And they have all of this electricity and all the state-regulated reflectors and things on the back of their buggies. And the issue, or the thing I want to point out is, this is this kind of like the same thing I see with the Reformed tradition people, the Reformed tradition movement. We got to be. It's just let's just assume the Reformed tradition. There's traditions that are picked up off other traditions that weren't the original tradition. And I use this Amish buggy as an example, right? The Amish are now following traditions since they're capitulating to the state, allowing them to regulate their buggies and tell them you need this reflector on the back, and you need blinkers and all that kind of stuff. They're trying to uphold their traditions by giving into the state, but they don't realize the whole reason they have that tradition is because they were trying to defy the state, right? And since a lot of them, changed their mind or don't care about the original tradition that sparked the whole buggy tradition, they picked up on the wrong tradition, and they went with the law of the tradition rather than the spirit of the tradition, right? They went with the buggy is the tradition. Actually, the buggy is not the tradition. Telling the state you can't tell us what to do is the tradition, right? The buggy's not. But now the time has gone through, and several generations in, one or two, they're now allowing the state to tell them what to do. But they're keeping the tradition that they thought they originally had. But that's the wrong tradition. You're upholding the wrong one. And I see the exact same thing happening with the Reformed tradition. In the name of saving your tradition, you're defying the original tradition, right? The original tradition with the Reformers was to hold the church accountable to the scriptures. That was the original tradition. Other traditions came from that, right? The confessions, right? And this is the same with the confessional traditionalists as well, the Reformed confessionalists, like live and die by the confessions. Are you confessional? They don't ask each other, are you faithful? They ask each other, are you confessional? Unfortunately, it's the same. They're two different things. I wish they weren't, but they are sometimes. And in the name of keeping their traditions, they defy the original tradition. They forget the original one that caused these other ones, right? And they don't uphold the true tradition. They go with the easy traditions. They go with the traditions that aren't going to cause them much backlash, right? And rather than holding and fighting the battles of our day like the Reformers did, they fought the battles of their day. They didn't fight the battles of the people that came before them. They fought the battles of their day. They confronted the people that were alive in their day, and they got killed for it, right? They were burned to death. They were excommunicated. They were strangled. They were ostracized, right? Because they were fighting the battles of their day. And that's the tradition that we should be looking to them to, like, okay, what's their tradition? Well, they fought the battles of their day. And they used the scriptures to fight the battles of their day. They didn't try to fight yesterday's battles and make it look like they were trying to do something. And I see the same thing that these Amish did with the buggy. I see the Reformed traditionalists doing the same thing, where they're not using the scriptures to fight the battles of our day. They're using the confessions to really stop a lot of people from fighting the battles of our day, right? Or to hide, or for using confessions and traditions to justify laziness, to justify opportunism. And they're not looking at what the Reformers passed down, like what they actually passed down. They're looking to the easy traditions that came off the original ones, right? And they're using those to justify their laziness, to justify cowardice, to justify faithlessness. Because they won't hold the magistrate to the scriptures. They won't do it. They're not doing it, right? I just had a conversation a couple days ago with a friend of mine, and he's been a very patient with me, Christian nationalist, and let me just read some of the things he said to me. He says to me, "You say you're holding the magistrate to God's standard. I'm saying, with what power? Sniping from the sidelines at good men striving to employ Christian political will to power accomplishes less than nothing. The only thing it might accomplish is guaranteed failure. If Christian men don't come to power, what magistrate do you think is going to take your admonishment seriously? A thoroughly secular or Islamic magistrate? Solomon tells us there is a time and place for everything. Dividing and demoralizing your own side before the battle has even started because their perspectives are a bit off from yours, and you would argue God's, achieves nothing but sure defeat. It's purity spiraling. God knows he's working with fallen and perfect men, and yet he still uses them. Imagine the founders had taken your tactical approach. No revolt unless we're totally in agreement on all points, or we can't have a country. We would still be under British rule. It simply doesn't work that way. If your family and property comes under attack from foreigners and a neighbor offers to help, are you going to refuse his help because he isn't in lockstep theological agreement with you? Sorry, unless we're all perfectly aligned, we're not on the Lord's side, so we're doomed. I would hope you'd have the good sense to take the help, defeat your adversaries, then have the peace to be able to sit down together and hash out your differences, right? So this is, again, a very common, and this is not the first time that I've heard this. I've heard this from several different Christian nationalists who don't like what I'm doing with this podcast and don't like what I'm doing on social media because they think I'm, according to him, he said, sniping at the silence of good men striving to employ Christian political will to power, right? And like Stephen Wolfe, like this conversation that I was having with him touched on Stephen Wolfe. So you see this very pragmatic approach, like let's forget about your differences. We're under attack, right? The house is on fire. Let's not have a theological discussion. Let's just put out the fire, right? That's how they frame it. There's this Christian nationalism. There's this like urgency to like just stop what you're doing, get rid of the immigrants kind of approach, right? The immigrants, and so like his example here. If your family and property comes under attack from foreigners, right, and a neighbor comes to help, right? So that's how he's phrased. That again, this is how Christian nationalists view it all the time, right? It's the foreigners, we're being invaded, and if we don't kick out all the immigrants, we're doomed, and that's how they frame the argument. And, if you listen to their podcasts and read their material, you'll see why. And again, this is them using what they call the Reformed tradition to justify what I perceive to be complete laziness, right? The problem's out there. The problem's not in here. The problem's not in America. The problem's out there. The foreigners are coming, right? And it's this boogeyman of here come the foreigners, and so there's a stress in Christian nationalism to like just everyone put aside your differences and kind of like let's fight. But I don't think and again they hit me. I usually get into these conversations, right? And what happens is after I prove that what I'm saying is faithful to the scriptures and what the Christian nationalists are saying is not faithful to the scriptures, right? It's not. They're not. What they're saying is not biblical, right? Their ends, their goals, their books, their desires. It's not faithful to the scriptures, right? And usually when I prove that what they're saying is unfaithful and what I'm saying is faithful, I'm not saying anything different than what the Bible says, right? I'm just using myself as an example. I always get hit with this right here. Oh, well, you're just sniping good people. I mean, what are you doing? We need to just drop our differences. And this is again picking up the wrong traditions from the reformers, right? The reformers didn't care about political power, right? They were faithful with what they had and where they were, even though no one listened to them, right? Even though the whole world came against them, like Martin Luther, for example, right? He didn't look at it pragmatically like, well, if I say this, then the whole church is going to come down. And do you want that, Martin Luther? You know what I'm saying? These guys risked their lives. A lot of them died, right? A lot of them died to the sound of clapping. And if we're going to pick up their traditions, these kind of statements of like we need to stop with our differences and just join together with the people who aren't faithful to God's word and join their side. That's not a Reformed tradition. Okay, as far as I know. Now don't let me just walk something back here. Don't let me say that Reformers didn't care about political power at all. Obviously, Calvin's institutes were to the Prince of France or the King of France or the Dauphin or whatever. They cared about political power, right? But political power was not something that they saw as the solution to the problems. The 5 solas were the solution to the problem, right? That's the tradition that they passed down, right? And if we're going to be faithful to Christ and his word, we cannot afford to fight paganism with Christian paganism, right? We cannot afford to fight the battles of our day with more paganism. And that's what the Christian nationalists want, right? This whole will to power thing, you know, the whole will to power thing, and you know, we need to gather power. That's what they say all the time. And you know, it's all about power, getting the controls of power. And if we don't, someone else will, and then we're all dead. You know, which is like I see what they're saying. I get it, but we don't fight paganism with paganism, right? The Word of God has always been the power of Christianity. Not in our plotting and scheming, not in our politics, not in our opportunism. The Word of God has always been the power. The prophets gave us a very important tradition, which is, even though no one listens to you, you still have to say the right thing. And this is something the Christian nationalists, they don't want to hear that. They do not want to hear that. They are not interested in hearing that. Nope. Set aside your differences. We will elect a Catholic to be the Christian prince if that's what it takes. Right? The traditional enemy of our forefathers, we will put him in as the emperor. We'll take the traditional enemy of our forefathers, and we'll establish the traditional we'll establish the traditional office that our forefathers sought to destroy in the name of our forefathers, right? That we'll take a Catholic, J.D. Vance is what they argue. We'll make him the Christian prince, which is essentially a king or an emperor. And in so doing, they will take the traditional enemy of our forefathers, a Catholic, and put him in a position of power that our forefathers sought to destroy with the creation of the Constitution. That's how absurd Christian nationalism is. And yet I have people telling me all the time, oh, but you're sniping at good people. No, I'm not. I'm holding me and others, it's not just me. The theonomists are concerned with the prophetic voice of the Christian to the magistrate. It's got to be prophetic. It can't be pragmatic. Christian nationalism is concerned with the pragmatic voice. Forget what the Bible says. Just forget it for now, okay? We have people who have a chance. Like, you know, J.D. Vance, for example, who's on his way to campaign against Massey. No, sorry, not J.D. Vance. It's Pete Hegseth. You know, Mr. Moscow, Mr. Christian Prince could be someday guy, whatever. Thought he was on our side, whatever. Now he's campaigning against Massey, from what I understand. I could be wrong about that, but I just saw something. I read something briefly online where he was going to campaign against Massey. So the Christian nationalist voice towards the magistrate is one of pragmatism. Again, they want the Christians in places of power doing the statism. They're not concerned with being a prophetic voice to the magistrate. I mean, Doug Wilson is a perfect example of this. You know, what his voice to Trump has not been prophetic at all, from what I understand. I've never seen him have a prophetic voice to Trump. Not to say that he should walk into the White House and tell Trump his business, so that would be great. I don't think he can. But again, that interview that I saw, like, what would you do about this? And suddenly, you know, there's Doug Wilson, you know, juggling pagan politics like he's like some, you know, Republican Party incumbent, you know. Christian nationalism is not concerned with a prophetic voice, which is what we're supposed to be. We're ambassadors of Christ. We don't ever drop Christ's concerns in any discipline of life, in any government sphere. We don't drop the concerns of Christ. We're always a voice for Christ, even if it costs us our positions of power, even if it costs us the war, right? We're faithful to Christ, right? We're ambassadors of him. And a lot of the Christian nationalists are convinced, in my opinion, that if we are faithful to Christ, we will lose this. We will lose this. We'll lose if we're faithful. I am picking that up with the more that they push back against the theonomists, the more I am picking up, like they're really saying, if we're faithful to Christ and his word, we'll lose. We can't do that right now. So again, when we're picking up the traditions of our forefathers, there's good ones and there's bad ones. And the ultimate tradition are the traditions set up by Scripture that we hold our forefathers to. And if they violate those, we don't uphold those traditions. So we need to be a prophetic voice to the magistrate. Remember, we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and love our neighbor as ourselves, for this is the law and the prophets, right? We don't forget about the prophets in that statement. Most people do. Now, I want to talk about this video right here. This is what I like to call the high cost of general equity. And the reason I say that is because and I say this all the time on this podcast, but it's become illegal to do the right thing. And we did that through general equity, right? We used general equity. We've general equityed our way into tyranny, into slavery, right? You can't stop tyranny with general equity. Okay, you can't stop it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You allow it. You invite it into your nation if you use general equity the way that general equity is understood to this day. So I just want to share this video and kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So the backdrop to this is two families caught this man who's been harassing the one family's daughter. It was two families. I think it was two sisters, and it was a man and a husband, and I think it was a man and husband. It was a wife and husband. And I think the wife's sister and her husband, who caught this man who had been harassing their daughter. Right, the man and his wife, they have a daughter. She's 17 years old, and this man had been harassing her. And they caught him sitting outside of their property, and they chased him down. And when they caught up to him, they beat the ever-living piss out of him, right? And here is the police interviews after the scene, and just listen to the family that beat the poop out of this guy who was harassing their daughter, and it was sitting at the edge of the property, just stalking, right? And just listen to what the family has to say.
Justin, who residents say was spotted lurking around the neighborhood, gives his side of the story, while other officers check in with witnesses.
Parked at the top of our
So this is the father of the girl, the 17-year-old, who's been harassed by this man.
Street, looking, staking out our house. When we pulled up, I turned on the bright light bars on the truck and went up there, got identification for my daughter that is him, and then I chased him through the neighborhood. He came down here somewhere, I think, and turned off the lights. That's when we had called for you guys to come. And we just sat up there with the lights off, just kind of waiting, because we knew he couldn't get out. He'd have to go out that way. And then my brother-in-law and sister-in-law in the white Ford came up to help us. And then when they said they were going to come down here and see if they could see a white Prius down here, turned down the street here, and then his headlights were coming down the road this way. Okay. And that's when he just rammed them head on and sent them into the ditch.
Okay.
And
so
then it was chaos.
That was your brother-in-law?
A suspicious vehicle was caught on a security camera stopping on a dirt road near the victim's home and shutting off its lights. Minutes before, witnesses say they stopped the suspect by ramming his car into a ditch.
So after the collision, what happened?
Basically, they went nuts after him because we've been tormented by this for a week. I've been scared for my daughter's life.
No, I get it.
And waiting, and it feels like we can't get, the sheriff's department knows, and they can't kick in the door and get him. It's like nothing can be done. Our hands are just tied, and we're supposed to wait until she gets, until something happens to her for us to really do anything about it.
So again, I mean, with the position that I'm from, the biblical position, one criticism against what I'm saying or what the Bible's saying is the biblical approach to justice is the magistrate doesn't interfere until something bad happens, right? And so people are like, well, I guess these horrible things can just happen, and then the magistrate just only reacts. What a dumb idea. But in our modern law system, you see what this guy is saying? You got the same problem. You have the exact same problem. So don't come to the Bible and be like, oh, it's only the Bible that does this. Look what this guy, his hands are tied. He is concerned for his daughter, and in our justice system, he can't do anything about it. In the biblical system, you can do something about it. What they did was absolutely 100% appropriate. They caught the man and they beat the piss out of him. That's the appropriate punishment. He's saying, listen, we told the sheriff can't find the guy to give him the restraining order because he's dodging the cops, and he's getting out. He's squirreling his way out of being, arrested or confronted by the civil magistrate. And so you see this father's frustration that, I know that this guy is waiting to get my daughter. I'm feeling for her life. He's telegraphing it to the world that he's trying to get my daughter. The cops can't find him, and we came across him. So what do you want me to do? But you hear the fear in his voice because what they did was technically illegal. Only the magistrate's allowed to discipline or mete out punishment or whatever, get involved or touch somebody, right? All of the witnesses involved in this, they're afraid that they're going to get sued. They're all fearful that they're going to go to prison, that they're going to get sued. Why? Because it's illegal to do the right thing in this country. They did the right thing, and they're afraid for their lives and their property because they're afraid that this guy now has a lawsuit against them. Whereas in a biblical system, it'd be taken before a judge and just say, I see what happened here. Yeah, I would beat the crap out of you too. Hope you learned your lesson. And if you try it again, same thing's going to happen to you. Don't go stalking people. Don't go harassing people. You learned your lesson. And if it happens again and you die, I'll be a witness for the people who killed you. That's common sense. But in our system, because we've generally equited our way away from God's law, we've now made it illegal for these people to do the right thing, and you hear the fear in their voice. Let's keep going.
Yeah, people's minds. This is a 17-year-old and a 48-year-old man. People want to kill him.
I understand completely.
Luckily, we kept it from that, but what do you do?
So
what do you do, right? In our system, only the cops can do something. It's illegal for you to do anything, right? Now, luckily in this case, none of the people who beat the crap out of this man were charged. Thankfully, right? Very, very thankfully. But officially, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, officially, you're not allowed to do that. Sometimes the victim who is in the wrong can rightfully sue you, even if you do the right thing.
Scared to death for my daughter's life.
I know,
and a pile of garbage like this, what's he going to get in jail? And then he's going to come back out, and I have to worry all over again.
See, there it is. What's he going to get? Right? We've caught him, and he's going to spend maybe a couple months in jail for stalking harassment. He's going to come back out and do the same thing again. Because this system that we've created, since we're smarter than God's system, oh, no, we can't do that right now. Remember, Christian nationalists, we can't do God's system right now, right? We've got to get control, and then we'll fix everything, right? We've created this hell for the innocent. That this guy was totally innocent, his daughter's innocent, and they are scared. And this is complete perversion and opposite twisting of Romans 13, where it says, if you do good, don't be afraid. If these people did good and they're afraid, why? How? How has that happened in our system? I thought the magistrate was be a terror to evil. And these guys are all afraid. What are they afraid of? Everyone knows listening to this, they have legitimate fear from the magistrate because that guy who got beat up could potentially have a court case against them because they probably broke a law somewhere.
And for life.
What happened? What led to...
I got nothing to say.
Okay, this is the brother-in-law. He's a big dude. He's a big Texas dude. Well, Arizona. He's a big Arizona guy. And I think he made that other guy suffer pretty well.
Okay.
You guys keep your dogs off the road and they won't have to catch a stray. So I got nothing to say.
Okay. You don't want to say what happened?
That guy. If I go to jail, you just load me up with handbook.
See, he's already assuming he's going to go to prison.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I mean?
I know. I just got to figure
All I
out
gotta
both
say
sides.
is that someone, no, there ain't no side.
Gotcha.
Dogs in the pound where they belong, away from my family. Okay?
Right. Understandable.
That's what it is.
Okay.
Because their mom and them kids were here. You know what I mean?
Right.
This guy has been stalking my niece. My sister and my brother-in-law went to dinner, and when they came back, he was driving around in
Mind
this
if I get my
Prius.
jacket?
Absolutely. No guns in the car?
No. Anyways, he was at their house when they got back from dinner. My sister called me. We're neighbors,
Okay.
and so I come down and we had our altercation with him. But he's been stalking her for a week, threatened to kill her. He's 48, she's 17. He's got a history of it. He's done it.
Cindy.
Okay.
You don't matter.
So now this is a guy who's had a history of it, right? Our justice system put him in for a little while, and he's come back out and he's doing it again. Brilliant, guys.
At this point in time, don't say anything.
And you're
Don't
not
say anything.
injured.
You heard that right. Witnesses and
He's telling him, this is her husband saying, don't say anything. Don't say anything, because you could get sued. You could go to prison for doing the right thing here.
police say this isn't exactly Dustin's first rodeo with the law. The 48-year-old was previously sentenced to time in prison for stalking and had been arrested in recent weeks for a similar incident involving alleged inappropriate comments toward a woman at another business.
We were coming home from supper, and we live kind of on a kind of quiet street, and I look up the street, and there's a car sitting there, and I'm like, that's not normal. And I asked my husband to hit the high beams, let's see what's up there. And there's a person in it, so we slide up next to him, look him in the face, and it's the perp that's been bothering my kid.
Okay.
He races down the street away from us. We, of course, give chase. We're on the phone with 911 trying to get a response. We have a gut feeling that he ran down here, not knowing it was a cul-de-sac. We see his taillight go out. I sit at the corner, waiting to see. I call my sister, because she lives in the neighborhood. I'm like, I need backup. Sheriff's not here yet. I got a perp in my neighborhood. I can't. And so she came and met me. My brother-in-law turned down the street. He had flipped a U and was coming to us. And you guys haven't been able to serve him since Monday. He's not, I'm like, he's out, he's here. I've called 911, no one's coming. And my brother-in-law was nice enough to stop his car.
Okay. Did you throw any strikes?
I might have hit him in the ribs.
Ribs. Punches? Okay.
Right, and they have to ask these questions because, he could sue for damages.
It's my kid.
I know.
It's my baby.
Moments later, Dustin is transported to a hospital where he continues denying the allegations against him.
How many people are all together?
I think 5, but it all.
So we would like to talk to you to try and get your explanation of
Okay.
So they come back to the brother-in-law and ask him again, can you talk to us? Because he was refusing to talk earlier.
what happened. Okay.
I get a call. Okay, I've listened to this go on. I ain't said a word. I get home, sit down. My sister-in-law calls in a panic. Tells my wife the guy's in the hood. We run out of here. We stop. Grab a gun. Tell my wife we don't need a gun. I pull up right here. She says, I think he's around the corner. The cops are on his way. No offense against you guys. There's no good coming out of what's going on, okay? Come around the corner, the guy stops, my wife yells, that's him. She jumps out, the guy throws it in reverse, and I come, goes like he's going forward, throws it back in reverse and guns it. To be honest with you, I tried to hit the brakes when we got to here, and I didn't. I hit the gas on the deal. I jump out, he tries to jump out, I jump in the deal, he hits me 2 or 3 times, and I restrain him. Goes to fighting on me. Okay, I'm just telling you right now, they're no good. So that was how we end up in this deal, okay? I think he hit the steering wheel really hard when his head bounced off the rest, and I had to hold him in this deal. You know what I mean? That's the deal. So I'm not trying to be rude to you guys.
No, you're fine.
I got a 17-year-old niece, this mother. I'm not even close with these guys. You got it? Right. I'm not going to sit around here and wait for something to happen And I get you guys got your own job. I'm telling you right now, he didn't have to come out of his car.
And
I pulled him up out of the deal
for sure,
and made sure he had a little bit of there, because there was no good coming out of this.
Right.
You understand? And do whatever you guys want to do.
The reason we kind of pride on, just getting you to give us a quick statement is looking at this. I mean, obviously, there's a reason this happened, and we know the backstory of what's been going on. We've actually been trying to arrest him for a couple of days, and so we understand the backstory, and we were just trying to give you a chance to articulate why you did what you did, because there may have been a good reason why you did it, and that's why we wanted to talk to you.
That's my reason right there. When she's running down the fucking deal, and that guy throws it in the deal, she rips it open. He's trying to jump out.
Right.
I think I got a few dings on me right now. You know what I mean? I'm all good with it, but I'm just telling you, this ain't for you guys. You do whatever you need to do, and we'll go. I'll play it. If I got, it doesn't.
Well, at this point, it's.
See, there it is. I mean, this guy is deathly afraid that he's going to be prosecuted and sent to prison, or get in trouble, be sued, whatever, right? Because they gave this stalker what he deserved, and in a biblical court of law, obviously, what he got was his just deserts, right? If you try to do something like this and you get beat up for it, you're not going to be protected in court for stalking a 17-year-old. You're not going to be protected in court for that. Biblical law is not on your side when you're in the wrong, right? Biblical law is only on your side when you're in the right. So, again, we've general equity. This is the high cost of general equity. We've general equitied our way into tyranny, where the innocent are worried about being sued for doing the right thing. God's law and God's system is the only law and only system that gives power to the righteous perpetually to always have the advantage in the courtroom. Not Christians, the righteous, right? Sometimes there's a difference. Well, not always, but sometimes there's a difference. So, again, this is my problem with general equity. You can't tell me that we did not use general equity to do and to create a environment and a law system where the righteous are now afraid of doing the right thing. You can't tell me we didn't use general equity to do that. We did. I know that we did. All right? So, I've read Witherspoon and what he had to say, and the combination of natural law and general equity and all that kind of stuff. That who was he preaching to? He was preaching to the framers. And this is the kind of such scenario because we didn't think that God's system was good enough, right? We had to go with the Greeks and the Romans and pagan philosophy to create a system where now the righteous are afraid to do the right thing, and the wicked are running rampant and amok among us because it's now legal, practically speaking, for them to be wicked, and it's illegal for the righteous to do anything about it. Lastly, I want to go to this segment from Reformation Red Pill. This is part 2 where he interviews Stephen Wolfe. I have not seen this yet, so I'm just going to respond to it right now.
So I was just debating a Muslim on campus here in Tennessee, and he was saying, we were talking about Islam, we were talking about Muslim immigration, and he said, so you're saying that because I was saying we need an immigration moratorium, and that we should specifically not permit Muslims to come into our country because they have historically been the enemies of Christendom, and they're an aggressive people. And I don't mean just like they're terrorists or something like that. I mean, like as a culture, they will seek to impose their will. They will seek wherever they go.
Right, and they can impose their will because we've given them a system where if they get enough votes or if they get into positions of power, they can take it over. Right, this is our fault. We've created a system that is vulnerable to Muslim invasion. Politically speaking, we are vulnerable to a majority of pagans. Right, that's what we've done. If a majority of pagans gets into this country and they can seize the reins of power, and the righteous or the Christians are screwed. That's our fault. And again, our solution to the problem is we just need to keep Muslims out of here. Like that's going to work. Like that works with guns, like that works with drugs. That doesn't work. And these guys are like, oh, we need to be pragmatic. And they'll tell you at the same time, yeah, we need to keep the Muslims out. Like that's going to work. That's not going to work. This nation is too big. There's too many ways. You've seen what people will do to get into this country. You cannot keep them out. It's a fool's errand. It hasn't worked with guns. It hasn't worked with drugs. And it's not going to work with people. You cannot regulate people like that. It's a fool's errand. And you guys are the voice of pragmatism. Like it's going to work. Why am I on the side of pragmatism now? Why in the world am I looking at this going, what is wrong with you people? Like you're going to keep the Muslims out? You know they're allowed to lie about what they believe, right? They're allowed to lie so that they can get the majority of people. And rather looking at the problem going, you know, maybe it's our system that we've built, right? That has this glaring, huge, Texas-sized weak spot of the legislature, all these legislatures making laws. And it doesn't even matter if the Muslims are majority. They just need to have the majority in the legislature, whatever legislature they're part of. Your local one, county, municipal, state. Or they just need people who are sympathetic to Islam. They don't even need to be Muslims. They just need to have liberals who are sympathetic to Islam be on their side for a couple votes, and the rest of us are screwed. We have a problem with Muslims in this country because the righteous cannot prosecute them for idolatry. And the Christian nationalists aren't concerned with that. No, they're like, oh no, we need to get the Christians in power, and then we need to kick out all the Muslims. Like that's going to work.
They are an energetic, fervent people that will look to impose their will on the civil polity where they're at. We look at places like Dearborn, Michigan, where
see, and that's the advantage of God's system. You cannot impose your will upon the people in God's political system. It's impossible, since there is no legislature. There's no handle for the Muslims to grab to say, okay, now we can put our rules in. But we've done that with ours. We've said, here are the reins to the society, and whoever gets it gets to control where these horses go. But God's system, you can't do that because there's no legislature. There's no one there to change the rules. God said, do not add to it or take away from it, outlawing a legislature for his system. And the genius of that is that the pagans will never, ever have the advantage in the political system. The only disadvantage is the one that we bring on ourselves through our idolatry.
We're hearing calls to prayer in the middle of the night, or in the early morning and things like that. And so, yeah, I told him, he asked me, so you're saying you wouldn't permit Muslims to come here? I say, no, I would shut the border for Muslims. And he said, what about mosques and things like that? I said, yeah, I believe that in a Christian nation, we would not have public displays of false worship at all. You've talked about this elsewhere, but I don't believe, and you don't believe, that we can coerce belief. We can't, no forced baptisms, no forcing Christianity into people's hearts.
But you can force church attendance, as Stephen Wolfe has said in his book. You can force church attendance. All right, that's in his book, chapter on the Christian Prince, I think, where he's like talking about the magistrate punishing people for not attending church.
Cannot do that. But I do believe that in an ideal Christian setting, in a Christian nation, that there wouldn't be public displays of false worship, whether that was mosques or synagogues or,
or according to Joel Webben, Baptist churches,
100-foot statues of Hindu demon gods in Texas. Like, I believe that we would, take down all of the high places and all of the Asherah poles, because those things dishonor God, and I believe they bring about his wrath. What would you say about that? In a Christian nation, in your conception, would there be like public displays of whether it be mosques or synagogues or Hindu temples? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's contingent based. So if you find yourself in a place where you have an entrenched religious group like Muslims, and they essentially control that area, but you have a broader supreme control, there might be a concession there. I don't know. I'm just get down into like the the contingency of politics. Like, I don't think you have to go, like, it always has to be a holy war where you're kind of like clearing things out. So I think in the end there should be resolve, but there also there's cases and
he's basically saying here, I don't have a line and I don't know where the line is.
Christian history where you have a Christian ruler and there's a permitted toleration. But I do think, though, however, that doesn't mean you be a coward. That doesn't mean you lack resolve. And yes, like within our context today, we should not allow the construction of...
Within our context today? Okay, 100 years from now, a context of 100 years from now, we should allow? What in the world? This is your guy? This is the guy who's like Mr. Christian Prince over here going, well, maybe someday, mosques. Are you freaking kidding me?
Of mosques and
Christian nationalists. This is your guy.
And Hindu temples for many reasons. But one reason is that we need to reclaim the idea of the public. Like you have architecture is by its nature public.
Yes.
And that means it belongs to the public. It is visual. It's where you live as a people. And what you need sort of dotted on your landscape are not, church here, mosque there, Hindu temple there. What you actually need are the churches rising up from.
And I mean, his reasoning there is weird to me. It is odd to me because the public owns the architect. The public owns it. I think this is the pagan interference into rational thinking that we're now saying here's the reason why you can't have mosques because it's bad for the architecture
from the place from the town. Right. Nowadays, unfortunately, the biggest structure within most places is the...
Yeah, that's the argument he's making. Yeah. It's aesthetically not pleasing.
The ball stadium, the sports ball stadium. That is one interesting thing, isn't it? That the largest structures are now sports ball, unfortunately. But and instead of churches. So yeah, I mean, it's claiming ownership of public space. And for that reason, those should not be allowed. And of course, like this,
any sort of biblical, like we need to honor God. We have a responsibility as a nation to righteousness exalts a nation. No, we cannot have public displays of pagan worship because that angers God and He's our King. Remember that Christ is King. Hey, remember that? Hey, remember that? Remember we used to say that? That's kind of like going by the wayside now. But we serve a king, and he doesn't want his enemy openly practicing rebellion against him. None of that. It's just, the public kind of owns everything, and it's bad for the architecture.
We only have that question because of policy. It's not like the reason why they are building Hindu temples is because they're coming here, and they shouldn't be allowed to. The other thing for Islam is obviously more aggressive, and they have like an explicit expression of owner, like they will.
I actually think, with respect to Josh, I don't think he likes this answer. I think if you ask Josh this question, he would not give such a, in my opinion, with respect to Dr. Wolfe, a limp-wristed answer.
Will own space, and they'll take ownership of the space and say this is Muslim space. And so it's very easy to exploit our passivity and thinking that it's just an abstract space of humanity. Do what you want.
Is there anything Christian in this answer at all?
No, as long as individual freedom and all that, they can exploit that very easily, and they're very outwardly expressive of that. So it's easy for you and I and others to say like that's bad. But there are other groups, and one of those groups would be, Hindu Indians, who are not as expressive in the sense of taking over, but they are more clever than Muslims are in seizing institutions, taking over space, taking over neighborhoods.
They're
and
sneaky.
creating these and taking these ethnic, like, I mean, I live near Raleigh, and there are entire communities that are now Indian. There are businesses that are being bought. There's a bar that used to be called Local Bar that now is owned by Indians. And every time you drive by it on the highway, it's like they're having some party there. They have a sense of that they're highly like ethnocentric. They think in terms of the good of their group. And that in itself is antithetical to like what conservatives say is a good American, by the way, but they still would have let him in. That's one of the contradictions of conservatism. But anyway, that we can't, like, Muslims are the easy target. One, because Muslims don't like Jews, and the other reason is that they're very open about it. Whereas Indians are the opposite on both sides of that, and so it's a little more difficult to. But I think they are just as pernicious in that regard, and that's why we should eliminate immigration. But then again, I want zero immigration. I don't want immigration from Europe. South Africa is fine, I guess. But other than that, I mean, we're just even from Europe.
Did anyone understand that answer at all? Like, why? Here's why we can't have mosques or Hindu temples. This is not a Christian answer at all. A Christian would never answer. I'm not saying he's not a Christian, but this is not a Christian answer. We don't want mosques and temples because that makes God angry and it's sinful, and righteousness exalts a nation. Easy. But that answer was, I didn't see a line. I didn't see barely a definition. I just heard that the Indians are clever and the Muslims aren't. And I don't want immigrants.
We're importing socialists. So
we're not importing socialists. We're creating socialists we're creating socialists right down the street from you. This is, again, my problem. The Christian nationalists, the problem's out there, right? That's their whole attitude. The problem's out there. And he's like, oh, the problem is we're importing socialists. Your neighbor is a socialist. Stephen Wolfe is somewhat of a socialist. He has come on record and said that, hey, if we all as a community decide that we want universal health care, then that's fine. That's socialism, right? He has said that. Your high school, your basic high school, every high school, I would say, every single high school in this country, every one, maybe with the exception of some Christian ones, but your basic high school is generating socialists. You know, those people that get on the comments and the nickel and dime you for having property, they're American born and bred. We don't have to import socialists. Most people are socialists because of our own institutions. And it wasn't the immigrants' fault that the socialism started to grow in this country.
It really doesn't matter. I just say,
yep, we're importing a bunch of libs who hate our.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
We're breeding libs in this country more than we're importing them.
I would say, I mean, I've been doing kind of a broad study on immigration throughout our nation's history. And this is the question I have when I was debating college students about this last week. Like, why you seem to believe that we have some kind of moral duty to bring people from other nations into our nation. Where does that moral duty come from? Why would we have some duty to import other people into our nation, especially when it is very clearly having deleterious effects on our society, when it's degrading our culture, our way of life, our history, our heritage? Like, where does that duty come from? And there's no answer. There's no answer. Like I would say the steel man is that as a Christian nation, we have a duty to, as a wealthy Christian nation, we have a duty to, let's say, work towards the good of the entire world in some sense. And I'm not totally hostile to that, but it must not be at the cost of our own nation. So it's like, can we bless other nations, like with missionaries or even like foreign aid at sometimes, or, like I'm open to these ideas, but I believe, like you, I believe we should have a total immigration moratorium. We have in our country's history, we've said that country and not that country. These people are more like us and will assimilate easier. These people will not. And that seems obvious.
I mean, one problem is, like, I beat up on the conservatives a lot because they have this very romantic view.
I don't know why he's beating up the conservatives. I mean, why can't he just put his differences aside and realize that the conservatives are friends? We need them for the will to power, right? I don't know why he would be. I mean, dunking on them, right? Why is he being divisive? It sounds like he's purity spiraling.
Of the human being, where you touch American dirt and suddenly you're an American, and you put checks next to the propositions and suddenly you're an American.
See, Dr. Wolfe, why are you saying this? Come on, these guys could help us, taking pot shots at people who are nice and good. They could really help us, and here you are, nickel and diming them. So what's your problem?
And those propositions tend to include making money and leaving people alone. Like that. That's in the end, that's what they all come down to.
That's right.
Make money, leave people alone. And that's one reason why like Indians do really well here when they immigrate is they're decent at making money, and they want to leave other people alone outside their own group, apart from their takeovers here and there.
Wow.
But there's this abstract view of the human. But like the big thing, like social science has shown this, and I hate to be like one of those like cite the researchers thing, but it's just been demonstrated that if you come from an ethnocentric country, if you come from a country of fraud and graft and bribery,
you're describing America.
You bring that here,
100%,
and that's just that is,
how in the world is not how in the world is fraud, graft, and bribery? How is that not America? How did you just not describe America? You think the immigrants are the only ones exploiting the system?
It's been shown that even after like to the second, third, fourth generation, those values retain within those people. And if it's onesie twosie coming over, then that can sort of be assimilated out. Yep. But if it's a mass immigration where they're in their own communities, now you have all those vices mixed in with that ethnocentrism. And you have to add more to this, though, is that many of these people are hostile to whites in general because they think of them as colonizers, as European colonizers. So they're propagandized in the country of national origin. Then they come here with that, and then they find an environment in which all the institutions are, functionally anti-white. And if you want to move up in the ranks of those institutions, well, guess what? You adopt anti-white sentiment, and then you actually are promoted faster, even if you're not very intelligent. You move up. And so the incentive structure that we have now is that foreigners who already have a sort of axe to grind will show up, they'll look at the landscape, realize if they just kind of dial it up a bit in their rhetoric, and because they're not white, they're going to all sorts of incentives that will then increase their promotability within institutions. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So this is why like conservatives, the mainstream conservatives are so delusional with like this abstract human thing of like checking the box on things. You can check the box on capitalism all day long and still, hate America. That's right. You can historically hate America. You can still check the box on all those things and join the institutions and be ethnocentric toward your own tribe in ways that are detrimental to the host, the hosts or the heritage people. And that's precisely what is happening.
Wait a sec. I thought the problem with the immigrants. He's saying you can be detrimental to your own tribe. But I thought the problem was out there, not in here. He's kind of laying the blame on the white people here, saying you can still hate your own tribe. Was that the immigrants' fault that we hate our own tribe? Where did that come from?
Of course, there are like decent people on all sides, as they say, but in general, in mass, treating a group as a group, that's the general characteristic. Just take like the Indians in Raleigh, 90% vote for Democrats. Like, wow. Do we want to import people with who are going to vote for the kids party? Conservatives, it's like their brain is busted. I really think that like the left, even though the left is mentally ill, they have a better sense of how to win in politics.
100%.
Conservatives are deeply ideological. Like they reject.
I don't understand. We need the conservatives. Why is he taking pot shots at people who could be on our side? Doesn't make sense to me.
Ideology, but they have this like weird, mental blocks that prevent them from seeing precisely what is right in front of them, because they kind of ascribe to everyone this like altruistic, like everyone's an American at heart, and once they touch the dirt, then it's suddenly they're Americans and they're going to adopt the same values, better education, and all, whatever this. That's not how it works, and that's just all. That is just a fact, and we have to.
I agree with him. That's not how it works.
Get away. We have to get away from that. I mean, you're not going to reform a boomer, but in the end, like the younger generations have to see how destructive the ideology of conservatism is as it's expressed today.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I just saw on my feed a clip of Vivek Ramaswamy just laying it out for everyone. Like, isn't it so great that when you go to Japan, you can never be Japanese? If you go to the Philippines, you can never be Filipino. If you can go to Brazil, but you'll never be Brazilian. But if you come to America and you touch our magic dirt, then you sign our magic paperwork.
The guy who like defrauded investors and all that, of course.
Yeah.
So another story, that I was at a GOP meeting a couple months ago, and there's this guy in Raleigh running for a U.S. House seat, and he's born in India, and he's a Republican guy, which is rare within that community. And his appeal was, I'm Indian.
Skip ahead here.
Christian nation, into our Christian values, and ultimately into Christ himself, and repent and believe the gospel. That's the hope. But yeah, I'm going to say, if you don't have a confession of faith, then yeah, you don't get to serve as a civil magistrate. We actually are going to make it such that it would be difficult for you to gain.
Again, this whole, like, you need a confession of faith to be in political. We tried that before, right? And we got rid of the need for our politicians to take these oaths. We used to have these oaths of office, and they just went away. And my question is, how did they go away if we only let in Christians up until that point? How did only Christians were in there? Only Christians had the ability to make it go away, right? Because we only let Christians into places of power, right? They all took the oath. Why did Christians get rid of it? And can you promise me that's never going to happen again? That last time we got rid of, within the first several decades of this nation's founding, they were already getting rid of the oaths of office, right? The Christian requirement of oath of office. They were already getting rid of it. Can you promise me that's never going to happen again? And the answer is no, you can't. You can't. This is, again, another fool's errand. Oh, if we just do Christians only in places of power. We tried that before in this country, and the Christians, who were much educated, remember, older and wiser than us, right? These are our forefathers, older than wiser, can't question them, right? Or the older and wiser people are talking now. The older and wiser people got rid of the requirements for Christian oaths of office. Remember, they're older and wiser. Everything they did was right. You can't question them. Why did they do that? Can you please tell me that's not going to happen again? I want to guarantee I want to promise that's never going to happen again. And these guys can't do that. But I'm just like, well, use your brains. They got rid of it before. We're going to get rid of it again. What in the world are you guys talking about?
Political power in our country, because you will wield that political power not for the good of the nation that loves Christ and that wants to honor him, but for your own in-group, whatever that may be.
Again, this is the folly of trying to use paganism to fight more paganism. He just said, if you get into political power, you will use that political power for a bad end. I agree with him. That's wrong. But the problem is, we've given people the opportunity to do that. We've made a system that has a vulnerability to that. And no one's looking at the system going, hey, maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't give people the opportunity, if they get into power, to kind of, ruin everything. And no one's looking around going, why do we have these institutions in the first place? What was the reason? Why do we have the Department of Education again? Why do we have the IRS? Why do we have building codes again? And no one's looking at this and going, maybe we shouldn't have this kind of stuff, because if the wrong people get a hold of this, they can really make it bad for everybody else. Why don't we just leave people alone? Let them regulate themselves, and we'll take care of the stuff that God has told us to take care of. Justice and only justice shall you follow. Remember, that's our responsibility. And these guys aren't asking that question. That's why I'm saying Christian nationalism, the way it's promoted, is a fool's errand. It's just a fool's errand. And in 10 years, the Christian nationalists might have their own political party, and they're going to be like, here's our guy we're pushing out for political office. And then it's going to be, okay, Christian coalition again. Okay, I get it. These guys don't want reformation. Well, I think they do want reformation. Let me take that back. They do want reformation. But I don't think they understand what it is and what it takes. They think that we should be fighting paganism with paganism, right? And their solution to all the problems is to use pagan philosophy and pagan reasoning to fight other pagans using the same one, realizing the Christians will always lose that game. We're always going to lose that game. We got one play. It's the Word of God. We've got one law system. It's God's law. We've got one institution. It's the church. Why don't we use those? No, we can't do that right now. No, we can't do that right now. No. We're being invaded, and we need to get Christians in places of power so that we can persecute the innocent with the guilty. And yeah, some innocent people will be persecuted, but I'm sure it'll honor God somehow. We will worry about honoring God and all of it later. We just need to put our differences aside and just quick seize the reins of power and put people like Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth in office. They'll do it for us. Yeah, they're our men. And I just keep coming back to this. These guys, they're high on pagan philosophy, and their solutions to problems is to take paganism and try and institute paganism. And a lot of them, in my opinion, a lot of them just can't see it. A lot of them don't understand it. Again, this right here is a demonstration of, I think they're not in touch with reality. We tried Christian oaths of office, and the Christians, remember, older and wiser people, got rid of it. If you can do an investigation into why they did that, right? It wasn't the pagans who got rid of it. It was the Christians who got rid of it. How and why? And if you can tell me after you've done your investigation in there that it failed last time, but it's going to work this time, and give a sort of logical explanation of how it's going to work this time, and we're never going to get rid of it this time, I promise, then you might have a point. But I just don't think this type of nationalism touches grass at all. It's not realistic. It's not pragmatic, even though they try to make it realistic and pragmatic. I just don't think it's either one. I think it's folly, trying to fight paganism with paganism. We've got to be a prophetic voice as Christians, ambassadors, and trust the Lord with, even if one person's faithful and everyone's not. Look at Athanasius. And Athanasius against the world. He was apparently the only one who was fighting that battle at the time. That's the opposite of pragmatism. He was the only one. And the world has been in this situation many times where it seems like there's only one person who's faithful in all the world, or one country, or one town, or one church. But it's always been through faith, the faithfulness of sometimes just one guy, that God works his changes in the land and in the country, in theology, in the church. And so when you have a whole movement that's dedicated to trying to fight paganism with paganism, I'm just like, have you guys not learned your lesson? There's a lot of traditions out there that tell you what you're saying is a really dumb idea. What about those traditions? To the law and the testimonies. If they be none of these, there's no dawn in them. Is that a tradition that we want to kind of go with, or we're like, we can't do that right now? Which is, I'm sure, an excuse that God recognizes. We can't do that right now. And God's like, oh, okay, my bad. I'll just step back, with my law, and I'll just be waiting here patiently after you guys save the country, right? And then you'll come and consult me, right? I'll just wait in the background. You guys go for it. Go ahead. Go with your Cicero and your Aristotle, and beat the bad guys, and I'll be back here waiting. Just let me know. And what are we doing? What are we doing here? The Bible says, don't put your faith in princes. Don't put your faith in chariots. And that's what nationalism is all about. You saw my friend who was commenting. He's like, we will to power, man. It's all about grabbing the reins of power. That's a fool's errand. As ambassadors of Christ, we stick our finger in the nose of the magistrate and say, thus saith the Lord. Whether anyone listens or not is irrelevant to us. We have God who's watching our moves. We answer to the Lord Jesus, and we give an account to him for what we did. And it is better to be a doorman in the temple of the Lord than to live in the tents, to dwell in the tents of the wicked. Remember that tradition? It's just nationalism is a fool's errand, and it's folly. Every time it rears its head, it's just folly. It's pagan from beginning and middle to end, and it's Christian-flavored paganism this time. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Think and Reform podcast. Head over to futureofchristendom.org for more information. And remember, my friends, think and reform.